Hi, it's JL. I'm very sorry that I haven't made a video the last couple Thursdays like I promised to, but I just started a new job and I've been really sick this last week, so it didn't work out, but I promise I'll be better about it from this point on. As I've been sick this week, I have been rereading through the Chronicles of Narnia, and so today I'd like to talk about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I've been rereading through them because I haven't read these books since I was a very little kid, and I didn't learn that there were supposed to be religious overtones to them until much, much later. I wanted to reread these books to see if the experience of reading them is at all different now that I'm an adult than I remember the experience being when I was a kid. There's a lot I could talk about with this book, but I want to narrow my focus to a couple things. First, I'm not giving a plot summary, so I'm assuming that somebody who's watching this video is somewhat familiar with the plot and just going from there. Second, I'm reading the books of Narnia in their published order rather than the HarperCollins suggested chronological order, because I've decided that that's how the people who were reading it as it came out would have experienced the series, and I want to experience it in that same way. There are good arguments for either side, and if you have one preference or the other, I'd love to hear about why you read the books in the order that you did. Let me know in the comments. When I was a kid, I remember the setting of Narnia being much more fleshed out and heavily populated than the way I'm reading it now. I find the writing much drier and kind of less interesting and less enchanting than I did, and I think that's partly because kids' imaginations engage differently than adults do. So all the parts that weren't present in the book, I sort of filled in when I was a little kid. Neither of my parents were religious when I was growing up, so sometimes I feel a little uncomfortable or unsettled by reading works that are overly religious or overly moralizing. I've been trying to get past that as I read these books because I know Lewis was a Christian and that's what he wrote about. I've found so far in these books that that's actually not what bothers me the most about it. It's that he's so eager to teach this moral lesson that it sometimes comes at the expense of good plot development, good character development, and that ultimately hurts his moral in the end. I'd like to talk mostly about Edmund. There are 4 kids in the book: Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. Throughout the book, Edmund's described as kind of a brat, even in the beginning. His siblings don't trust him, they think he's lying and deceitful and spiteful, and he is supposed to be a representation of what happens when you give in to temptation and sin. The villain of the novel, the White Witch, tempts Edmund by giving him enchanted Turkish delights and also promising him a position as a king. This is really important to him because he wants to stick it to his older brother Peter, and he thinks that he'll be able to lord it over him if he has a position of authority. As we go along in the book, Edmund has a feeling in his gut that going with the White Witch is wrong, but he puts these aside because he wants more of the enchanted food, and he really is attracted to this idea of power. The first time he hears the name Aslan, he is filled with dread and horror, whereas his siblings are filled with awe, joy, and anticipation. I don't have a problem with any of this. The problem I have with Edmund is the way he's treated at the end of the book. Is in chapter 17, right before Edmund gets knighted after a battle and he's done some work for the side of good. He gets healed of his wounds, but he's also looking better than anyone had ever seen him look, for ages. In fact, ever since his first term at that horrid school, which was where he had begun to go wrong, he had become his real old self again and could look you in the face. There is no indication prior to chapter 17, the final chapter of the book, that Edmund has ever been anything but a brat. It's poor story construction and poor character development to bring something like this in at the very end of the book. Furthermore, it hurts Lewis's moral that goodness comes from faith, and that even sinners can be redeemed if they ask for forgiveness. It would have been more effective and a lot more interesting if we'd seen some sort of indication of Edmund's descent into sin, because Edmund didn't start out bad. He became bad through temptation and external influences, and then through faith came back to goodness. Putting this at the end of the book is just bad writing. Now, I'm not bashing the Chronicles of Narnia. I really enjoyed reading them as a kid, and someday in a hypothetical future where I have kids, I will read these books to them. But I also hope that someday my hypothetical unborn children will grow up to be critical readers. I think that examining the stories that you read in childhood with a critical eye is very important to understand who you are and how you came to be. I finished reading Prince Caspian, and I'm going to put up a video about that as soon as I sort of get around to it, so probably in the next couple days. I also want to say really quickly that I have not been reading any literary criticism or reflections on Lewis's work. All of the impressions that I'm giving right now in these videos are just what I'm observing while I'm reading. I'm not listening to what anybody else has to say. I intend to after I finish the series, but I wanted to figure out what I thought of it first before I let anybody else's impressions sort of cloud the way I read it. If you've read or reread the Narnia books, I would love to hear what you have to say and hear your take on how I'm reading the books, and if you have a different interpretation or you view the characters at all differently than I do, I would love to start an active discussion about that. As a side note, we've raised $145 for the RAIN fundraiser I'm doing for my 21st birthday. This is wonderful, but it seems to have lost a little bit of steam in the last week or so, and so I'd really like to get that going again because it's a cause I believe in, and I think it can really make the world a better place doing things like this. So including my $5 contribution, we're up to $19.50 in my RAIN glass. I really want to thank everybody so much who's donated so far, and if you believe in this cause, even if you don't have the means to donate, please pass it on to your friends. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a link here-ish to the video that I did on my birthday about this fundraiser that I'm doing and what I hope to accomplish with it. Otherwise, have a good few days, and I will see you with my Prince Caspian video very soon.